Okay, I think we are good to start. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Great to see so many old and new faces. Wonderful to all have you here for this 11th DCZ Talks webinar. I'm Michaela. I'm the Managing Director of the Sino-German Agricultural Center. And many of you, or some of you may know maybe that DCZ Talks is a webinar series that we have been that has been running since 2023. So we've covered all kinds of different topics. And today, I think what we want to do is to sort of zoom out a bit and take a bird's eye view to look at the bigger picture concerning issues of bilateral cooperation between businesses, issues around trade, investment, and so on. And of course, we have an occasion for this, which is, as you also all might be aware of, that China just recently published its 15th five-year plan. And that obviously, this five-year plan is very important, but it will not only define how China's agricultural sector will be developing domestically, but I think it will also redefine how China is engaging with partners around the world. And on the German/European side, we don't have one single plan, but we have a set of policies that policymakers have been revising over the past years, and they will also be very instrumental in redefining how the EU produces food, what consumers want, and how the EU engages and interacts and trades with other countries around the world. And so I think in this webinar, we really want to shine a light on what are the current challenges that we are facing in this bigger setting, what are the new opportunities that business partners could seize, and to think very much broadly and perhaps out of the box, how to reconfigure Sino-German agricultural cooperation for mutual benefit in a rapidly changing agri-food landscape. And I think I will stop here and hand over to my colleague Wang Gang for a very short welcome. Thanks to everyone and enjoy.
Thank you, Michaela. Good day, everyone. And it's my great pleasure to join this DCZ talk with Blair today, together with the experts both from Germany and China, to exchange and discuss the latest agriculture policy developments and bilateral cooperation opportunities between our two countries. Agriculture is the fundamental industry of national development and also a key field of long-term and in-depth cooperation between China and Germany. Both countries boast unique advantage and rich experiences in agricultural development. China has always attended great importance to high-quality development of the agriculture and rural sector. The released the 15th five-year plan has laid out a clear strategic point for China's agriculture modernization, focusing on the industrial upgrading, technical innovation, green and sustainable development, as well as the optimization of agriculture trade and investment environments. This policy arrangement will not only drive the high quality development of China's domestic agri-food industry, but also created broad market access and cooperation space for foreign partners, including Germany. Meanwhile, Germany and the EU have always been important partner of China in agriculture, trade, technology, innovation, and industrial cooperation. The complementary advantage between the China and Germany in agriculture field are permanent. China's huge market demand and complete agriculture industrial chain, together with Germany's advanced agriculture technology, space equality standards, and mutual management experience, have laid a solid fundamental for bilateral win-win cooperation. Today's webinar provides a platform for thick policy orientation, sort out market rules, and identify new opportunities and potential challenges for future cooperation. I sincerely hope that through today's deep communication, we can build closer cooperative ties, break through development constraints, and jointly promote the sustainable and high quality development of China-German agriculture and food industry cooperation. Finally, I wish this webinar complete success. Thank you. I will follow the from Ahmad.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Wang Geng and Michaela, for your such a great intro to our event. As Michaela already mentioned, DCZ talks are running a series since we have been doing 2023. We choose the topic of interest and then invite experts from both Germany and China to address the topic. So today we are very glad to have two distinguished experts from China and Germany to share their thoughts on the latest policy developments on agriculture. In China, we know recently Chinese government released 15th five-year plan, and in which the government emphasized science and technology innovation and rural development as a key pillar of the development for the next 5 years. In Europe, European Union also released European Union's vision for agriculture and food and agricultural policy. And also Germany released its German Ministry of Agriculture and Regional Identity also released its strategy for exports in agriculture sector. So in our webinar today, we would like to examine recent strategy policy developments in both countries and their implication for agri-food sector and also agribusiness. So we would like to focus our discussion on conditions for market access, agricultural value chain, trade, investment, dynamics, and agri-food technology innovation, and opportunities and challenges in the future cooperation. So now let me introduce our two great guests, starting from Professor Long Wenjun, who is sitting next to me. And Professor Long is a professor from the Research Center for Rural Economy of the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs, MARA, in China. And he has served as a visiting scholar at the Cornell University in the US. And he is also as a deputy director of National Agricultural and Rural Insurance Research Center at China Agricultural University. His main research areas include rural policy, rural finance, and agricultural insurance. He just let me know that they are going to organize international conference on rural finance in next 2 weeks. He has led more than 60 research projects, published 23 monographs, and more than 200 academic papers. Many of his research findings have been submitted to the government, and several of them has been integrated in the policy documents. So in that regard, both Professor Long and his institute is very influential in Chinese agriculture and rural policy making. Thank you. Thank you. And then from Germany, we have Professor Dr. Thomas Herzfeld, and he's a professor at Leibniz Institute of Agricultural Development in Transition Economics, or in short, IAMO, in October of 2011. And he's the head of the Department of Agricultural Policy. And he also holds joint appointment as a professor of agricultural policy at University of Halle, Germany, where he also is co-opted as a professor at the Law and Economics faculty. He studied agricultural economics at the universities Halle and Kiel, Germany, and he has obtained his PhD and also completed his habilitation at University of Kiel. From 2007 to 2011, he was employed as assistant professor at Wageningen University in Netherlands. So he has also participated in many projects on agricultural policy and published many of his work in esteemed academic journals. So let me just, before we get started, I have some housekeeping rules. I would kindly ask all of our attendees to turn off your microphone during the presentation, and then I will moderate the discussion. After that, we will take questions from both from the room and online. At that point, you can ask your question by raising hand, so then we can allow you to turn on your microphone and camera so you can pose your question, or you can also type in your question into chat box. So then, without further ado, now I will give the floor to Professor Long.
Hello. Hello, my friends. It's my pleasure to join with you to share some experience of China. So I want to share the China's agricultural policy framework and priorities for the 15 5-year plan in China. So this year is the first year of the 50th 5-year plan. So in China, we have done so much along this kind of plan. I will show you the brief of my topic. Maybe the first and the second, I will show you the abbreviation. About China, maybe so many of you have been to China, or you were several times, or also you can find some videos on the internet. You can know much more about China. So this is the brief of the brief map of China and the stars. In China, we have this kind of thing. Why I showed this map to you? In China, in the southeast are all the plant. So the more products, the more food come from this part. This part is about 40%, but about 40% we can plant, and the rest of them maybe it's hard for us to plant. So in this area, there are about 90% of population are densely here. So this is the fact in China. So in China, we have 1.4 billion population, but more of them are all living in this 40%, so 40% of the area. So this is the brief of Chinese population, and I have the short comparative between the GDP and the GDP between US, China, and Germany. But we are maybe the GDP per capita, we are lower than you. The major achievement, in China in these 40 years, we have got very good achievements in these 40 years. We have faster progress in agricultural modernization. The most important thing is that we can feed up ourselves, and the per capita availability of 500 kilo for the gram. So for each one, we can get this kind of production. This is very good for Chinese people. So we can make the whole society in a very great, stable way. The second is that we have the other, not only the food, but also so many crop tillage and the planting harvest. we have the comprehensive mechanization rate of crop tillage. We have in a steady improvement. So the integrated development of primary, secondary, and tertiary in industrial. So the people who are living in the villages, they can have their own jobs. The rural infrastructure is also very good. Just like the 5G, it's popular in Chinese village. No. Okay. The rural farmers' education is also making a significant improvement. The farmers' income also in a very good way. So the very good result is the rural poor. We have made the poverty elevation in China, and we have shown that in the whole world we have made the very good result in the poverty reduction target. The third is that the framework of the Chinese agricultural support policies. I think as you as a research institution, you can know the framework of Chinese policies, agricultural policies. This is the very good. This is the very good map for you to load the brief. One foundation. This foundation is the NAM system. You know, in China, the NAM system is the foundation. This NAM system is not the private land. It's the land depends on the local village.
Excuse me, can you turn off your speakers when our expert is speaking? Hello.
There are 5 systems, 1 foundation, and then 5 systems. One is the agricultural production and the operation. Second is the market circulation, and the third is the sport protection. The fifth is the fourth is the rural industrial development. The fifth is the urban-rural integrated development policies. The core of the principle is that we just want to take less from the farmers, and then provide more, just like give more and provide more to them, and then make the whole market liberalized. So the first, this kind of the land system it means the policies for rural contracted land. You know, if the farmer want to plant their own to plant the land, they need to make a contraction with the local village. So this is the basic in China. So the second is the agricultural production and the operation policies. So this kind of production, this kind of policy is making the production into a high level. It can support the smallholders to get a very good result for every year's income. The third is that agricultural products market. So we try to make the products market circulation in a very good way. You know, if the farmers produce their own plants, how can they sell it? So the government has actively improved procurement and the reserve policies, which can strengthen the market regulation and quality and safe oversight to ensure the smooth, orderly market operation. The fourth is that the agriculture support and the protection policies. So, in order to encourage the smallholders to plant so many productions, so there are many support and protections for them. For example, the technology innovation and the rural infrastructure, agriculture investment subsidy, and price support, and so many support ways. And these kind of ways are all under the WTO rules. I think it's very good. The fifth is that the rural industry development. So this means this need to ensure secure supply of the grain and the other agricultural products. You just as Abel has showed that we have some food chain. The food chain, in order to make the food chain in a very good resilience. So we have the central government have provided some projects to make this kind of from primary, secondary, and tertiary industry to get into special areas. So this has played very good. The sixth is that the urban-rural integrated development policies. In the maybe 20 years ago, China has a division between rural areas and the urban areas. But just now, we try to integrate it in these two areas, which can make all the farmers in a very good higher living standard. So this map can show these five the different policy. The first is the rural land. Rural land policies is the basic for us, and then production, market support, and the industry and the rural and the urban and the rural integration can all play their own roles in this scheme. The fourth, I will show you something about the 15th five-year plan. You know, last year we have the central government has issued about the 15th five-year plan, and during this plan, we also have the agriculture and the rural affairs plan. So I will show you this plan, including 4 key tasks and 2 supporting safeguards. And this map, these slides can show the whole policies in the 50th five-year plan about the rural agriculture and the rural policies. The first is that we need to improving the agricultural production and capacity and quality and efficiencies. You know, this is the very good for us. Very good things. You know, in order to keep the whole country's food security, in order to keep the not only the rice, wheat, and maize, but also including the soybeans and so many other agricultural products. So we need to improving this kind of capacity and qualities. So there are many ways. First is that to stabilize the grain and oilseed production. The details I don't want to share you. You can know something about the brief. And the second is the coordinate agricultural trade and production. Something we can plant and we can breed out ourselves, and something we couldn't afford. And we couldn't have enough land to plant and to breed, and something we need to import from the other countries. The third is the improving overall production capacities and improving the vegetable basket. This can feed for the demand of the people come from not only from rural areas but also from the urban areas. The second is to implement regular target assessment. We have get very good result for the poverty elevation, but in order to keep this kind of result, the central government try to separate the special policies for these kind of areas. So in these 5 years, we try to stable this kind of 5 years policy. So this not only for the China, but also I think it's also benefit for the whole world. The most important things is that improving the regular assistance policy system to make these poverty-stricken areas have their own ambitions to improving themselves. The task 3 is promote stable income growth for the farmers. If so many support ways, so many support deals, the most objection is that promote the farmers' income. If the farmers has get very good income for themselves, they can living in a very good way, and they will get so many food, and they are living in their own room, and they can enjoy the life as the urban areas. The task 4 is that build a livable, business friendly and beautiful village based on local conditions. This is we have learned this this from some European countries. When I visit European countries, I've seen that very beautiful village in Italy and in Germany and many places. It's like very good picture. So in China, we have learned something, and in this recent 10 years, we have taken a very great look in Chinese village, and just now we have tried to use some projects to make the small village to look very beautiful. Maybe sometimes if you visit China, you can also find this kind of change, including the water, including the power, and the 5G, anything. So if you live in the suburb of the city, you can see this kind of service is convenience. Also, we also have two support. The first support is the strengthen the institution and mechanism. So it depends on our jobs. You know, we need to have very good policies to encourage so many factors into a very good way. So we try to accelerate the improvement of modern agricultural operating system. And the second is that innovate the investment and finance mechanism for rural revitalization, and standardize and orderly activate rural resources, and promote the bilateral flows between urban and rural factors. The second support is it's especially in China. We have the Chinese the Communist Party in China. So this party can lead all the agricultural rural areas and the farmers. So we just try to strengthen this kind of strengthen the implementation of the rural revitalization responsibility system, and then strengthen the rural grassroots party organization. This kind of organization can organize so many factors into the grassland. And then the third is improving the rural work measures. So how to use their own way to organize the different factors. It's depend on their own idea and their own thinking. So these two support and that 5 targets can make the whole 5 years. So I think it's the brief to introduce the brief introduction to you about the agriculture and the rural development in China. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Long. Thank you very much. Yes, it was a very comprehensive presentation. So you touched a lot of points on Chinese agricultural policy and recent 15th five-year plan. I have a lot of questions, and probably our audience have some questions. Please hold your thoughts and hold your question. We will get into them. Before we get to our next speaker, Professor Herzfeld, I would like to do some shameless plug. This is a study done by our center on the 15th five-year plan, which we recently published. So you go to our website, you can download it. This is our interpretation what the 15th five-year plan is and what would be the implication for different sectors in agriculture and especially for foreign agribusinesses. Thank you very much. Now I will go to Professor Thomas Herzfeld. Now floor is yours. You can share your PPT from your computer. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to present a few spotlights. I would call it spotlights. It will never be a comprehensive overview of the different policies, strategies, and developments and their potential implications. I structured the presentation along 3 building blocks. First, I would like to describe once again or bring back to your memory the macro context for EU policy, agricultural policy making and agricultural development. In the second part, I will describe few selected recent policy strategies affecting agricultural production. Basically, I will not talk that much about trade export strategies or trade strategies. And I will close with an attempt to look in this bowl and predict the future, though I will present a few snapshots from medium-term outlooks produced by the European Commission and by OECD FAO. If we look at the macro environment, it's continuously changing, that's clear. And it's also clear that the EU is the largest trader of farm goods. If we combine exports and imports of agri-food products, the EU accounted in 2025 for roughly 430 billion euros in traded values. The EU is preparing an enlargement. It's unclear in which year the different countries will join. However, if we try to simulate a little bit the effect and just add the traded values of the EU with the all potential current and potential candidate countries, this trade volume will increase by roughly 3.6%, which means another roughly 20 billion euro on top of this value. This graph illustrates the different EU enlargement rounds starting in 73 up to the current status of the 6 Western Balkan countries plus Moldova and Ukraine, or only Ukraine. And it's clear that the change in agricultural land will be much larger related to the change in consumers, which implies that the increase in the production potential of an enlarged European Union will be much higher than the increase in potential consumption, neglecting for a moment a change in consumption patterns due to increased incomes. As a consequence, it implies that the European Union, or the agriculture sector of the European Union, will depend even more on export markets as it developed over the last decades already in that direction. On the other hand, the reduction of the food system's net emissions, which accounts for roughly one third of total emissions, is still rather slow. So it remains questionable in how far the EU will reach the emission reduction goals and neutrality, carbon neutrality in 2050. If we just look at the agriculture sector and exclude for the moment any shifts across sectors. At the same time, scholars claim that the adaptation of the agriculture sector to climate change is still quite poor. If we talk about increasing heat waves, more droughts in Europe, or other extreme weather events, European agriculture is in general only poorly prepared. And there might be need to invest more in this field in the upcoming years. At the same time, the common agriculture policy is very much constrained or compliant with WTO requirements. Therefore, most of the policy instruments have a very limited direct production-related effect, and therefore the trade impact of the cap and any cap reform is rather limited. So any trade effect will come by the development of market forces, may it be the consumption within the European Union or the competitiveness of EU products on international markets. If you look at the policy documents, you might still remember the green Green Deal, the European Green Deal, and the Farm to Fork strategy, which have been established in 2019. However, since then, several shocks and events happened. Not mentioning only, or just mentioning as one example, the Russian aggression to the Ukraine, which changed discussions, debates, and also the policy perspective. So in the beginning of the Green Deal, or in the core of the Green Deal, further environmental sustainability of the agricultural production has been slightly changed, twisted back, and the strategic aspect of some independence and less reliance on imports and increasing production in the European Union has gained or regained importance again. At the same time, the softening environmental ambitions, so softening some requirements for good agricultural conditions, for instance, this permanent fallow land of 4% has been softened to bargain or to address farmers' concerns during the farm protests 2-3 years ago. In the recent vision for agriculture and food, which has been mentioned already, there are 3 key aspects. One is the focus on income for European farmers and competitiveness. So the European Commission aims at maintaining or increasing the competitiveness of European agriculture. Let me say, without mentioning it related to which benchmark, so somehow still a rather vague term. And the income level of European farmers should be kept or increased relative to the general economic development. The Commission wants to reduce the reliance of the European agriculture sector on critical imports of oilseeds and protein crops. This is the biggest part of agricultural inputs in the livestock sector, which is to a large extent imported from third countries. And the debate also related to the competitiveness is that the European farmers always complain that the standards in the European Union are increasing, and therefore other third country producers have better competition prospects, and therefore the EU wants to align the production standards for imports stronger to the European level in order to rebalance this level playing field. However, at the same time, which occupies European policy landscape maybe even more, are the proposals for the multi-annual financial framework for the period after 2027, which implies also future or the next reform of the common agricultural policy, depending on the outcome of the negotiations of this multi-annual financial framework. Because this framework decides how much money will be available for the member states to spend on agriculture, and also the way how it should be organized, the programming and planning of the different plans. This multi-annual financial framework should support the European Union in accelerating the transition towards a more sustainable production methods. And again, this goal of climate neutrality by 2050 is still maintained, it's still in place. At the same time, it should offer better rewards for delivering more ambitious ecosystem services. Therefore, farmers should be encouraged to do more than the mandatory requirements to care for biodiversity, for better protection of water resources, prevent soil erosion, and other ecosystem services. And the European Commission invented a new term, so-called farm stewardship, which encompasses farmers' activities to deliver ecosystem services, and there should be a new balance achieved between this farm stewardship and the transition towards more resilient production systems. So the shocks of the recent years provide the background that the Commission also wants to increase the resilience of the agriculture system. Please allow me to give a very short snapshot on the structure of this policy field on the ecosystem services and environmental related agriculture policies. In this part, you see the so-called green architecture of the common agriculture policy as it exists currently since the last CAP reform. And there are basically two components, two layers. The lower part, the so-called conditionality, is mandatory for all farmers. Though there are these 9 good agriculture and environmental conditions. Initially, some have been removed, and so-called 11 statutory requirements, which have been derived from EU law. So main examples are Water Framework Directive, Nitrate Directive, Natura 2000, and other EU laws, directives, which have to be implemented in the member states, and all farmers have to comply with these legal bases without any direct compensation. The second layer, these green boxes, describe payments which are available within the common agriculture policy if farmers implement certain additional activities. There are these so-called eco-schemes, which is a long catalog of different measures like flowering strips, like protecting grassland and sowing more legumes, protein crops, and so forth. And for each of these eco-scheme, member states decide how much the size of the payment farmers can receive. These eco-schemes are coming from the so-called Pillar 1 and are fully financed from the EU budget. So for member states, it's free of charge. They have no additional costs if they program these eco-schemes. On the other side, we have the so-called agri-environmental climate measures and green investments, which are financed from the so-called Pillar 1 of the Common Agriculture Policy. And almost all measures in this Pillar 1 have to be, to some extent, co-financed, which means if there should be €1 spent to farmers, only depending on the conditions, 70 cents, 75 cents, or 60 cents are coming from the EU budget, and the other remaining 25 cents or 30 cents have to be financed by the member states on top. So that incurs some additional costs to national budgets. At the same time, the European Union offered member states the opportunity to design this green architecture conditional upon their national domestic requirements. Therefore, we have a broad range across the 27 member states. Which eco-schemes will be available for farmers and which agri-environmental climate measures have been implemented and how much money is allocated to these different instruments. Under the current proposal for the multi-annual financial framework, this proposed new green architecture of the CAP planned to be starting in 2 years, will slightly change, not dramatically, but slightly. What is the most important parts that the co-funding requirements will increase, so it will be more costly from the perspective of the member states, and we might expect that the heterogeneity across member states will even increase. So we might observe a further move away from a common agricultural policy. The plans so far foresee that the agri-environment climate actions, so these two parts, eco schemes and agri-environmental climate measures, will be merged into one set of instruments, and they all have to be co-financed by member states. So that will be less, tends to be less money from the European budget. This conditionality will be relabeled as farm stewardship, and the SMRs, the statutory and mandatory requirements, remain in place. There will be no change, and the good agriculture environmental conditions have been relabeled as protective practices, which have to be defined by the member states, which means that there also member states might get more freedom how exactly to design these protective practices compared to the good agriculture environmental conditions at the current situation, which are defined at EU level. As a cross-cutting policy, I see the need to talk about the climate change mitigation activities. The integration of the agriculture sector in the national energy and climate plans is very heterogeneous, leading to very different ambitions or resulting in very different ambitions of the member states, how agriculture has to comply or has to address these goals. Scholars complain that food consumption, the consumers and their dietary behavior is not integrated in the NECPs so far. However, the food consumption presents a big leverage to address the extent of emissions from the agricultural production and the composition of these emissions. You might be aware that the European Union wanted to shift from the CO2 tax, which has been implemented for some years, to a new emission trading system, the so-called ETS2, which should include emissions coming from energy consumption. The shift from the tax to the ETS2, or the most precisely the introduction of the new emission trading system, has been postponed by 1 year. Though it's not taking place in 26, but in 27. And the member states, again, have some freedom how to integrate emissions resulting from the energy consumption within agriculture and electricity consumption within agriculture. Some member states, like Germany, already claimed or communicated that agriculture should not be integrated in this emission trading system, while other member states, few member states, will also include agriculture in this ETS2, which will result in, again, different degrees of production costs across member states. And the second part relates to the introduction of the carbon border adjustment mechanism, which started early 2026, so this year, and affects mainly at the current stage fertilizer markets. The fertilizer imports, which is 1/3 of EU fertilizer consumption, is subject to this carbon border adjustment mechanism, which implies that for importing fertilizers, the importers have to pay an extra tax covering the CO2 emissions or the costs for CO2 emissions in the production if the costs for the emissions in the European Union would be higher than in the production country. There is an active debate how to integrate other areas of the agri-food system into this carbon border adjustment mechanism, to also, for instance, charging a carbon price for imported beef. But there's no solution at the moment, and this discussion is still ongoing. Now let me look at, or try to look into the future. What could be potential channels of these different policy strategies and policy developments on agricultural markets? If you start from the supply side, it's clear that the European Union still wants to support smaller farms compared to larger farms. So the direct payments should be implemented in a way that larger farms will get not a full increase in direct payments, and will have a capping of direct payments, which will affect the future structural change in the agriculture sector. If you look at the traditional productivity measures, or traditional TFP measures, it's expected that this pressure to have a more environmental sustainable production systems will result in lower growth of this productivity indicators, what we observe already since the last decades in the European Union. There might be a shift if we extend these productivity measures also to cover external environmental effects. The EU still wants to reduce the use of pesticides, in particular pesticides which are seen as more harmful to the environment. And it's likely to be expected that we will have a declining area in intensive production, so that more areas will be covered by more extensive production systems. And the costs of fertilizer and energy-intensive agri-food products like greenhouses and other farms operating only with imported fertilizers and mineral fertilizers might face increasing costs. On the demand side, we observe since several years a shift to more vegetable-based diets, so less consumption, in particular of pork and beef, less so for poultry meat, which puts challenges to the livestock sector. And at the same time, we have a stable or even shrinking population in Europe, which means the future size of the consumption number of consumers will not increase with the increase in production. And depending on how far these different carbon border adjustment mechanisms come into play, it could be that importing countries shift to more competitive suppliers, because EU production and EU exports will become more expensive if they still rely on these energy intensive and mineral fertilizer intensive inputs. However, what exactly might be the net effect on the trade balance is very difficult to predict and still remains unknown. Let me just briefly show you a few snapshots from outlooks produced by the European Commission recently and the OECD FAO, which have to be discussed with a grain of salt. Yeah, they have been produced before the most recent crisis in Near East, so we do not have any effects of increasing natural gas prices and fertilizer prices of the recent weeks and months included in these projections. And here the development of EU production differs depending which sector we are looking at or which product. In particular, sugar and pig meat is predicted to decline substantially, while poultry and soya beans should increase, and milk and soft wheat will remain more or less rather stable. The self-sufficiency rates of the EU for selected products is similar, very much in the range of the past years, so it's difficult to identify somewhere clear tendencies. So the predictions are very much in a sort of continuation of the variation we have had in recent decades. And also the change of export volumes indicates that there are, of course, the relative change looks large, but this is can be mainly explained by a small volume of exports where the relative change becomes larger. But again, we see not consistent picture or trend for different products. There are different predictions, in some cases increasing, in some cases declining exports. If you look at the blue bars, indicate related to the change in the next 10 years. If you look at the change in the number of livestock, in particular dairy herds and yields, the European Union, this is now coming from the OECD, is predicted to still increase dairy production. We see this positive increase by roughly 6%, 0.6%, however, with a smaller dairy herd. So the productivity, the milk yield of the dairy herd will increase. While for China, there is the prediction to have a larger increase in dairy production, at the same time also an increasing herd size. So the mechanisms are predicted to be different. If you look at biofuels as a last example, again, European Union is predicted to have a declining change in ethanol demand and a declining change in gasoline demand, which implies OECD, FAO expect that generally EU will be more energy efficient. And the same applies for diesel and biomass-based diesel demand. In both cases, this prediction tends to have a slightly increasing share of bio-based diesel and gasoline or energy sources, so there will be a further reduction of fossil sources in energy production. If we look at the different stocks for this production, we observe that vegetable oils are still seen as the major source for the European Union. And the current policy resulted in a stricter regulation of palm oil and palm oil as the basis for biofuel. However, which implies that vegetable oil or the share of vegetable oils has to increase. But generally, it's difficult to see any large change compared to other world regions or countries. As I mentioned, we face a wide range of uncertainties, so it's very difficult to really say with certainty what might be the effect of the different policy strategies and developments in the future for production, consumption, and trade. And in particular, as it seems, there are more and more economic shocks and policies are not the only driver of this development. Therefore, political developments remain one source of uncertainties. The same holds for energy prices and the availability of fossil energy sources, feedstocks, and the general macroeconomic development, in particular, not only in the European Union, but also in major import destinations of EU agricultural products, and maybe also competing markets of other exporters will play an important role. What I personally see as a more safe prediction or certain prediction that the demand for more sustainable agricultural production, and not only from consumers, but also from voters, will remain, even if we have currently a more contested field of policy, which implies that a tremendous reversal of the current policy orientation to increase ecosystem services to reduce negative environmental impacts of agricultural production will not be very likely. And the same holds for the consumers as the key users of agricultural products. So there I would expect that sustainable aspects, sustainability aspects of the products they consume, of the food they consume, will remain rather important. With this, I would like to thank you, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Yes. Professor Helsfeld, thank you very much for your such an excellent presentation. And we know the CAP, European Common Agricultural Policy, is quite important for setting the agenda for all 28 countries in EU. And we would definitely like to know more about new green architecture CAP under 2028 to 2034. So yes, we have a lot to discuss, but I think due to time limit, I have one long question to each expert, and then I will open up the floor to our audience online and in the room. So I will start my question with Professor Long, who is just sitting next to me, who is, as I introduce him, he's an expert on Chinese agricultural policy, and some of their proposals are taken up by MARA and integrated into #1 document and 15's 5-year plan. And I said, we also did explainer in 15's 5-year plan. There's quite a number of projects which is directly addresses agriculture, although some details has to be released. So we are very keen to see what is in this document. So my question is, under this new 15th 5-year plan, which subsectors of agriculture would benefit the most? We know agriculture is a quite wide range of field, right? From the crop farming to animal husbandry to meat to dairy, organic agriculture, agri-machinery. We can talk a lot about it. So in your opinion, which sector would benefit the most, and what are the opportunities and challenges?
Okay, it's very good. I think during this 55 years plan, it's a very good chance for not only for China but also for the whole world. I think it will focus about this kind of areas. The first is the field of production capacity that guarantee the grain and the major agricultural products. You know, this kind of capacity guarantee is very important for the 1.5 billion population. This make the whole country in a stable development. So in this area, the Chinese government has pushing forward the high standard land innovation and the protection of the black land,
Black soil.
yes, and the black soil and the salt land,
Colonized lands.
yes, colonized lands, and the soybeans productivity living. So this is the fourth. The second area is the seed industry innovation. This can make the modern agriculture into a high level. This is the core of the strategy in China. So the central government just want to capture some leading enterprises to the seed of the maize and the soybean and some livestock. They try to make this kind of seed industry in a high level. The third is that I hope this is the very good area for German enterprise in China. The field of smart agriculture and the high agricultural machinery and equipment. You know, the quality of German, quality of that starch is famous in the whole world. We try to learn something from you. I think it's good. Just now, the plan has pushing some 5G smart land and some AI make the AI technology can be used to precise the special land and some higher agricultural machinery can be used in different land, different kind of land. So in China, the fact is that the local villages also have smaller and smaller farmers, the same as European. So the smart agriculture is very important. I think it's growing. It will be erupt. It will be erupt in this five-year plan. The fourth is that the field of green and low carbon and the ecological agriculture. So I think the lower carbon, as Professor Thomas has shown us, we are all facing the same. We are all facing the same problem. Not only China but also the European. So the central government will provide some subsidy to the farmers, which can encourage them to lowering the fertilizer using and any other agricultural materials. They can lower and lower.
We have one good question from the chat.
Okay.
The question was
Maybe after.
yes, maybe you can read it.
I
Yes.
can read it.
Okay.
It's from Mrs. Henrike Schirmacher. She is asking, thank you very much for this interesting input, Professor Long. The German agricultural minister is visiting China soon to assign an agreement on pork export to China. What do you expect from this meeting? Will there be an agreement on? Hope you can give some insights. Thanks a lot.
Oh yes, I mean this is we just focus about the that we have some advantage, a very good opportunity for we to join with maybe the industry upgrading in not only the green.
Yes.
The green organic, the plant and the feeding, but also the processing of the agricultural processing. So it also need to, in Chinese people, we need the upgrade of the consuming upgrade their consuming structure. The structure. So it needs the high quality. We need the high quality. We need the organic. We need some very good quality of the agricultural products. So I think during this kind of meeting, you can share some kind of experience about what you have done in how to improving the quality, not only improving the quality, but also make some quarantine of the whole country for the quality of agricultural products. I think it's not only in the plant, but also in the livestock. Yes.
Thank you very much. So you think there would be a lot of the sectors in agriculture could benefit, whether it's like building high quality farmlands and promoting innovation in seed sector. And we know China plays very huge role in digitalization and smart agriculture. So we know, I want to just get back to that question again. I have another question. So in 2020, there was an outbreak of ASF among wild boars in Germany. Then after that, the pork importation from Germany into China was stopped. So there is a huge interest in the German meat sector, especially pork sector, in when China is going to lift this ban, so German pork producers can import or export into China. So that was a question. So we are expecting a visit from German Ministry of Agriculture next month. If he comes, do you expect there would be some kind of agreement on pork? Do you have any
maybe
inside knowledge?
From my own opinion, just now the pork market is not very good in China. So maybe 1 month ago, the central government, the Mara, has issued a special document for, we try to lower the whole country's productivity of the yes, I think why did they do like that? The market is not very good, and so many feeders, they didn't get their own right profit from this kind of plant, from this kind of pork. So they all couldn't get enough money from this kind of industry. How can this market open to Germany, to your country? If you are lower, you provide the lower price, maybe you can join with us. But
yes, German pork is relatively more expensive, but they believe they have better quality. We also follow pork developments in China. We understand there is market saturation and overcapacity. That's why pork prices are declining. And we know Mara had an urgent meeting last month to address how to stabilize pork prices, because a lot of producers are losing money, right, because of this declining prices. Yes, this is a tough issue to deal with. My last question is, on 15th five-year plan, technology and innovation has taken a center stage, right? So you talk about seed sector development, and we know about biotechnology, digitalization, smart agriculture, etc., right? So how these emphasis could impact both domestic and foreign companies, and especially in China, we recently Chinese government passed new supply chain resilience regulations and data and localization requirements. How do you think these policies, whether the supply chain resilience regulations or data localization requirement, would impact especially foreign companies, and how would you advise them to adapt this changing environment?
Oh, yes. I think the first is that we should get very good strong policy support. In China, the policy support is very important. If no policy support, we couldn't do anything you want in China. So if you get the policy support, you can get the top level strategic guidance for you to enter the China. And we have the DCZ's cooperation plan. Maybe you have means that green digital and high efficiency. I think this is very good. You need the policy support. The second is that I think we can share the technology. You have very good advantage for the automatic and the high quality control and the organic standard and some seed from the livestock. I think this is your advantage. And also in China, we have our own advantage from the AI, from the drone, from big data, and from the cost control. So I think these two kinds of advantage can combine together.
So it can be very complementary. So do you believe that Germany has a lot of advantages in agri-machinery or organic food production, and China maybe in AI and drones, etc., so that two countries or two markets can play a complementary, constructive role to build more mutually beneficial economic partnership?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Of course, we have a lot of questions, but I will also now go to Professor Hertzfeld and on what his take on some of these important issues. So in your slide also, you talked about EU's vision for agriculture and food, and I'm especially interested in the new green architecture CAP 2028 and 2034. So it's a similar question. What specific subsectors of agriculture could both positively or negatively affected from these policies, in your opinion? Of European Union's, the CAP 2834 policy.
Yeah. Well, basically, the European or the CAP plans do not focus on specific agriculture subsectors. There are a few exceptions. One is that there is the general strategy to increase the production of pulses and leguminous crops in Europe. So in order to fill this protein gap, which is relying on imports at the moment, and order also to increase the diversity of the production structure and contribute to more soil fertility and less fertilizer demand. And the second part are the options to provide coupled support to rather small extent for the different member states. And where member states provide support conditional upon their own political economic conditions. Though, for instance, Germany provides at the moment some coupled support to mother cows, suckler cows. But these, in general, I would say, are rather minor areas. And the larger effect might come via these additional requirements and in how far the opportunity costs of the different products will be affected by the need to work with in a less intensive production mode, and also the question of how much labor is still needed for the production processes.
Thank you. Thank
So
you.
to keep it short, there is no clear strategy subsector.
Subsector. So
Product.
it works a little bit differently from Chinese 15th five-year plan. My last question, and then I open up to the floor. My last question is related to trade. We know German Ministry of Agriculture and Regional Identity released its export strategy in last December, right? And we know European Union is also busy signing trade deals with Mercosur and India and Mexico, Vietnam, etc., right? So how do you think these trade deals would impact German agri-food sector? And also what kind of opportunities it will present or challenges to German agri-food sector, but also specifically Sino-German, China-German agri-food cooperations. And I was also reading these new green architecture cap proposals. Do you think these climate environmental related regulations in these cap policies would make European agriculture less competitive compared to Latin America or India or China? So what do you think? What is your take? So this is a very big question. It's all of it is related to trade. You can, yes, you can address the component or you can address it holistically. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Of course, that's a very relevant question. And let me start with the last part. Definitely the increasing requirements and increasing internalizing environmental costs, in particular related to emissions, will not make European products more competitive. Though in how far it's very likely that they will become more expensive related to competitors which do not engage in similar policies. And at the same time, all these trade agreements and new trade agreements aim at rather stabilizing the conditions and the level playing field, but I would not expect a big opening of markets or big new markets, except for mass production. Yeah, though the options, in particular, if you look at Latin America, most scholars agree that there will be additional opportunities for European exports of rather high-value products, yeah, dairy products and other high-value processed food. But the mass market of pork, of different cereals, they compete very much with a number of other exporters on global markets, and the situation will not change substantially by these trade agreements.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now I open up the floor. Michaela, do you have any question?
She put her question here in the chat.
I had a question. I put it in the chat, but given that we only have 2 minutes, I don't know, Professor Long, can you answer this question in a minute? I'm not sure. You have been telling us that China has put a lot of focus on improving production capacity. I would say quite successfully over the past decades. China is producing more and more, maybe more effectively, more efficiently, and maybe also more cheaply than before. I don't know, you could tell. Do you see that China eventually might emerge as a significant food exporter across many different categories, or maybe even in some distant day as a net food exporter? Currently, China is a net food importer, I believe. And if so, in which food categories would you see that happening?
Oh, maybe I
if you have a crystal ball.
The export, but I just want to say that in China we try to. The first thing is that we try to fill up ourselves, and then something we can export just like the fishery. The fishery products, most of the fishery products can be exported. Yes. We just want to import from some wine from your country, and from some maybe some wine or some some poultry. Yes, and some good milk or anything from your country. What you maybe I didn't focus about the agricultural products trade, so I couldn't answer your question details. Maybe if you come to China, we can visit. Oh, maybe.
Yes.
It's okay.
Yes. Yes, maybe when you come back to China, you can visit Professor Long and have extensive discussion. I went to some events 2 months ago. Yes, China has a going out strategy. Currently, Chinese exports in agri-food trade is still increasing, but still China is a net importer. But I would say the areas like aquatics, processed food, machinery, drones would be very hot topics. Is there any more questions from online? We can take 1 or 2 questions. Yeah. Okay. Okay, you can share it. Yes. So if there is no question from online, we have a short survey to evaluate and keep track of our events. I hope our participants scan this QR code with your smartphone and fill out our survey. We would be very appreciative. Thank you very much. So today we had such a wonderful discussion with Professor Long and also Professor Hertzfeld, and we learned both countries' strategy for agriculture development for next 5 years. And we believe there's, as Professor Long mentioned, there is a complementarity between different subsectors of agriculture of both countries. And some areas, China has strengths. Some areas, Germany has strengths, so they can cooperate and build partnership and export to each other. And I believe there could be more opportunities for both countries. So to our audience, thank you very much for being so patient and listening to our event. And we have recorded our event, and later we are also going to post it on our YouTube channel. Thank you very much, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.